Kia ora katoa, ko Tom Land toko ingoa. Thank you so much for having me on the panel today. It's interesting you saying that I was an expert. I actually studied a manufacturing and industrial technology degree at university, and then my first job was at Fisher & Paykel Healthcare, and that was working in a manufacturing environment. And my wife and I, we wanted to travel, so we decided to teach ourselves how to teach English, and we went and taught English in China and in South Korea. And when I was going to come back to New Zealand, I didn't really know what I wanted to do because I didn't want to be in manufacturing anymore. And so I thought, well, I guess I can say I'm an engineer. So if I'm going to do anything, I think I'll do renewable energy. So basically, I set the intention that I was going to get a job in renewable energy. So I came back to New Zealand and we traveled around for a bit. About 3 months later, a mate of mine was working as a wind engineer. He said he'd handed in his notice and then I should put in my application. So I remember sitting with my, who ended up being my boss, and he goes, "Do you know anything about wind engineering?" I'm like, "Nah, but I'm sharp as a tack." So anyway, I got the job, and then I went, and then they funded me to go to university to study wind engineering, and then I went to Denmark, and so I learned all of this stuff, but I really just taught myself into it. So yeah, I guess you can do anything if you've got the intention. So with Ecotricity, which is the company I'm now working for, there's a bit of a backstory there too, because I worked as a wind engineer for a company called Wind Farm Group, and the director of that company, Al Yates, is also the director of Ecotricity. So we worked on a wind farm. It was called the Hawa Uru Maraki Wind Farm. It was a 504 megawatt wind farm that was developed in conjunction with Contact Energy. And what happened was we got it consented. I think it was going to be a $1.4 billion project. If it was built, it would have been the closure of Huntly, and it would have been good for the environment and for the local community. But what happened was the national government weakened the emissions trading scheme and removed the moratorium on oil and gas about the same time as the financial crisis arrived. And so this project was parked. And Ecotricity, the genesis of that was the parking of this project, because Al and his brother Mark decided that they were going to set up an electricity company that was going to act as a driver for new renewable generation, because they both have children, they care about the future, and they wanted to get these wind farms and solar farms off the ground. So Ecotricity, which is the company I now work for, is the genesis of that wind farm work that was happening back in 2008. So in terms of Ecotricity, we are 100% 22 carbonzero certified. So what that means is that we calculate the carbon components associated with all of the generation that we source from. So we source from hydro, wind, and solar, and only from certified sites. And we work out the carbon that's associated with that. So all of the carbon involved in the concrete in a hydro dam, or the mining of silicon for the manufacture of solar panels, or the oil and then the sales of the turbines, we go to enormous detail to ensure that we have calculated accurately the carbon footprint associated with the electricity that we sell, and then we will offset that carbon footprint with certified biodiversity credits. So the likes of the Hinaway Reserve in Akaroa and Winga Reserve, Chatham Islands, and there's other sites around the country. So Ecotricity has been around for since 2014. They are a living wage certified employer. We're also on the Sustainable Business Network. I'm a director on the Sustainable Business Network, and they're doing some really good mahi in that space of dealing with climate, waste, and the circular economy. And as I mentioned before, we only source from certified wind, solar and hydro, and we're also in the process of trying to get solar farms up and off the ground. So in the electricity market, it's really interesting. Electricity is really interesting. It's an absolute mess, but it's really, really interesting. But in the electricity market, there is a few key players that have the lion's share of the control over what happens with the price and what happens with supply. And so Ecotricity, we have to work within that market. But what we're seeing now is a huge upsurge of corporates and individuals that care about where they get their electricity from. And so we're still getting customers, even if we're not the cheapest. So it's really encouraging to see that. So one of my directors, Mark Yates, he got the first Nissan Leaf in the country, and Ecotricity supply about 95% of the electric vehicle charging stations in New Zealand, all of ChargeNet and all of Tesla. We, as I've mentioned before, we're carbonzero certified. About 45% of our customers have solar, so that's about 100 times better than all the other retailers, because we've got very solar-friendly price plans. We don't supply, we're not solar installers, but we have really good price plans and buyback rates for people that do have solar. We're also very keen on promoting the stories of our customers, though, because a lot of our customers have a sustainable leaning, and so we just, I believe that if you tell these stories, you're inspiring other people to do the same. So it's very exciting in that respect. So this graph here is really just showing the growth of solar. This is the generation from solar. So in summer, solar accounts for about 14% of our generation that we're selling. Annualized, that equates to about 7%. And another a graph here that's kind of showing the exciting things that are going on in the electricity sector. So we supply about 50 different solar installers. We're solar agnostic, but some of the larger ones, like the likes of Solar Zero and Harrison. So we're dealing with residential customers with solar and batteries. We've got vehicle to grid projects. We have large-scale solar farms, demand response systems, and renewable energy. And the exciting thing about renewable energy is that obviously the fuel source is free. There's no carbon emissions and there's no pollution. So it's an amazing field to be a part of. In terms of climate, electricity accounts, these are the emissions excluding agriculture. Agriculture equates to about 50% of New Zealand's CO2 emissions. But you can see from here that electricity is also quite a major player. Like, a lot of people think that New Zealand is 85 or 90% renewable. The reality is we're closer to 65% because of the fact that geothermal energy emits a lot more carbon equivalent than people realize. So in terms of low-hanging fruit, choosing an electricity retailer that is renewable is a pretty easy win. But the other thing that's quite easy is, well, I'm not sure how easy it is, but is the electrification of our vehicle fleet and also process heat. So we're very blessed in New Zealand to have a lot of renewable energy resources. And if we build enough, then we should be able to deal with the volatility in those resources. So this just comes back to what I was saying about geothermal energy and the amount of emissions that occur from that. So the recent Climate Change Commission came out with this graph, and what it's showing is that the cost of carbon today is actually $65 a tonne. However, in 2019, it was $25 a tonne. And this cost is likely to exceed $150 or $200 a tonne. I saw this morning that in Switzerland, the cost of carbon is already $150 a tonne. And so what this means is that it's a real incentive for corporations that need to report on their climate emissions to clean up their act. So to look at how they can reduce their emissions. And it is a cost that can be avoided by just reducing the amount of electricity that you use, reducing the amount of carbon that you use as an individual. So environmentalism is mainstream now. I remember a while ago, whenever I'd talk about saving the environment, people would tell me to hug a tree and ask me whether or not I smoked pot. So we've moved a long way. So we're not getting those sorts of questions now. It's mainstream. Post COVID, there's been a huge upswing in companies that care about environmental social governance, and also in the financial side of things. Those have been the companies that have actually cared about one another and about the environment have been the ones that have actually made money. So it makes sense to do the right thing by the environment, but also by people. And this has been shown now with customers demanding it. So we've got the Sustainable Development Goals. We have, Te Ao Māori is coming to the fore now in terms of a holistic long-term worldview, and I think that is really, really encouraging that we're embracing concepts of kaitiaki and care for our natural world and for our people. The other thing that's occurring is that you can see you've got networks such as the Sustainable Business Network, you've got Toitu Envirocare, you've got the Climate Leaders Coalition they represent, I think it's around 80 or 90% of the GDP of New Zealand, and these companies have come out and said that they are going to base their decisions on science-based targets. They're going to try their best to reduce emissions. And we cannot forget Generation Zero and how they have been instrumental in bringing the Zero Carbon Act about. And here is just some of the customers that we are supplying at Ecotricity, and they're all doing their bit in terms of sustainability. And I'm seeing this massive upswing of corporates that are making the decision to do the right thing now. And it's good to realize that businesses are made up with people, and people are individuals, and it's the individuals in those companies that are beginning to have real impact. So I do believe that business can make a positive impact in the world. And for me, this is why I'm doing it. I feel really blessed to be able to work in a field where I can basically get paid to promote renewable energy and live my values, because we live in paradise and we need to keep it that way.